Imagine building the world everyone uses and still being the one nobody talks about. This is Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980, low-key, self-made, and somehow always overlooked. Stay for why they never ask for help. That one piece explains everything else. The empty house. It is 1978. You are 8 years old. The school bus drops you off. You pull a key from a shoelace around your neck, unlock the front door, and step into silence. No parent, no neighbor checking in, no way to call anyone. You make yourself something to eat, flip through the 4 channels, and wait. That is it. Nobody is coming. You are on your own. And after enough afternoons like that, being left alone stops feeling strange. It starts feeling normal. You burn your hand on the stove. No one is there. You remember it forever. You get in trouble at school. You fix it before anyone finds out. You sit in that quiet house thinking, do I tell someone or do I just handle it myself? Every time, the answer is the same. By 1984, close to 7 million children between 5 and 13 were regularly coming home to empty houses. 7 million. That is not a statistic about neglect. That is the founding condition of an entire generation. For Gen X, being alone was not the exception. It was the training. They did not grow up safe. They grew up prepared. That empty house did something to the brain that no classroom ever could. Every action had a direct consequence. No buffer. No one to soften the landing. Just cause, effect, and you standing alone in the middle of it. When your parents finally walked through the door, discipline was not a conversation. You crossed the line, you paid for it. Right then, no appeals, no feelings meeting. And somehow, that was cleaner than confusion. That is how the brain learned to run ahead of itself. Think 2 steps forward or face the consequences alone. And once that wiring is in, it does not come out. Nobody raised them, so they raised themselves. The empty house was only the beginning. Silence was not peaceful for them. It was where they learned no one was coming. What came next did not happen to them once. It happened over and over. The betrayal pattern. They grew up hearing the same promise on repeat. Show up, stay loyal, play by the rules, and life holds up its end. Then they watched their fathers hand 3 decades to a company and get handed a cardboard box in return. No warning, no conversation, just a Tuesday that changed everything. It was not just the layoffs. Divorce rates climbed through the 70s and 80s. The adults preaching stability were dismantling it at home. That is a hard thing to learn as a child. The people teaching you security do not feel secure themselves. The rules kept getting rewritten by the same people who wrote them. They sat at the dinner table watching adults act like everything was fine. Nothing was fine. And nobody asked how they felt about it. So they stopped bringing it up. Not out of shyness, out of efficiency. That is where the armor came from. What everyone reads as emotional distance is not coldness. It is the posture of someone who already played out how this ends. They did not stop trusting people. They just stopped expecting anything back. That is not bitterness. It is what happens when disappointment becomes predictable. Gen X does not complain about it, not because they are built differently from anyone else, because they clocked early that complaining changes nothing. So they take it in, file it, and keep moving. That is not resilience. That is what disappointment looks like when it has been absorbed so many times it stopped surprising you. And it is exactly why social media never landed the way it did for other generations. Not a technology gap. They built most of the internet. It is a privacy instinct that goes back further than any platform. When you were a teenager and something went wrong, maybe 5 people knew. It faded. No algorithm surfacing it 18 months later. Broadcasting your life to strangers does not feel like freedom to Gen X. It feels like handing out ammunition. They decided early, the less visible you are, the less there is to use against you. In a world where everyone is performing, Gen X already decided they do not need an audience. If you are placing someone right now, a parent, a coworker, yourself, subscribe. The next part is about why they never ask for help, and once you understand it, you cannot ununderstand it. The irony shield and the authority problem. You know the one. The person who cracks a joke the second something goes wrong at work, keeps everything light, deflects before anyone gets close enough to see what is actually happening underneath. That is not a habit they picked up later. That reflex was built in elementary school while a teacher calmly explained what to do when the nuclear bombs hit. Duck under your desk, like plywood stops thermonuclear war. Adults spoke about total annihilation like a weather update, and then told the kids not to worry. When the people meant to protect you present two completely opposite realities and ask you to hold both, something shifts. You learn to keep a little distance from everything, because caring too much starts to feel like a setup. That distance is not emptiness, it is insulation. It is how Gen X stays functional in situations that unravel the people around them. Not because they feel less, because they already ran the scenario before the meeting started. They look calm in a crisis, but they are not calm. They are just not surprised. Most people call that emotional distance. Gen X calls it being ready, and it shapes everything about how they read authority. Titles mean nothing. What matters is whether you know what you are doing. Earn that, and they are fully in. Fake it, and they will route around you so quietly you will not notice until the work is already finished. They watch the people in charge get Watergate wrong, Vietnam wrong, the AIDS crisis wrong in ways that killed people. That lesson arrived early, and it never expired. Power and competence are not the same thing. Anyone who needs to be told that was not paying attention. Now take all of that, the self-reliance, the armor, the learned distrust, and drop it into a generation that also got economically hammered at every single stage. The work and the cost. 12 years old, 1982. Alarm goes off before 5. Paper route. 200 houses in the dark before school starts. No one tracking the hours. No one sending a check-in. Just a job that needed doing and the understanding that showing up was not optional. Nobody renegotiated that. These were not resume builders. These were raw encounters with adult responsibility handed to children who had no backup and no instructions. You figured it out or you failed. There was no third option. Then they watched their parents get cut loose by the companies that owed them everything. The oldest graduated into a recession. The middle cohort hit their stride as the dot-com bubble burst. The youngest came of age as 2008 tore through everything, economically hit at every single turn. Which is why multiple income streams became standard for them, not because they are naturally entrepreneurial, because they learned viscerally that every job is temporary and the company will always choose itself. They cannot control whether they get cut. They accepted that early. What they can control is whether they are the last name on anyone's list when the cuts come. So they make themselves indispensable, quietly, without fanfare, without anyone knowing they are doing it. Fix the problem before anyone notices it existed. Go back to your desk, say nothing. That is not modesty. They are often the person everyone depends on, but rarely the one asking for recognition. Not because they do not care, because usefulness mattered more than visibility in the world that shaped them. That is a survival pattern that started decades ago and never switched off. They are significantly less likely to reach out for support when things get hard. Not because there is no one to ask, because asking feels like admitting defeat. They were wired from childhood to carry things alone, and that wiring does not care how old you are. They did not choose self-reliance. Self-reliance chose them. And here is the part that catches most people completely off guard. They will never ask you for anything, but the moment you need something, they are already there. No post about it, no expectation of credit. When your parents were absent, your friends became your family. That kind of loyalty does not ask for anything in return. They give their kids everything they never had. All the attention, all the presence, all the softness. And sometimes they sit there quietly, wondering whether they got it right. Sometimes you can see the contradiction in small moments. A Gen X parent saying, "Call me when you arrive," while knowing nobody ever said that to them. Because in the Gen X worldview, being visible means being vulnerable. And vulnerability, in their experience, is just disappointment waiting to arrive. called loners when they were just self-sufficient, called cold when they were just protected, called difficult when they were simply the ones who already did the math and did not like the answer. They were raised alone, so they learned to survive alone. And the world called that independence instead of what it actually is. They were not forgotten because they had nothing to say. They became quiet because they learned early that being seen and being understood are not the same thing. And maybe that is the real psychology of Gen X. They do not move through the world like people waiting to be noticed. They move through it like people who learned how to survive without needing an audience. Drop a comment. Gen X, does this land? Any other generation? Is this someone you know? Every reply gets read.